Nobody expected Ukraine to become one of the most important players in the Iran war. Not Washington, not Tehran, not Moscow. Certainly not the Gulf states that have been absorbing Iranian missile and drone strikes for 30 days while their oil revenues evaporate and their economies absorb what capital economics projects could be between 10 and 15% GDP losses if this war continues for 3 months. But this week, Zelensky landed in Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Qatar, and when he left, he had signed 10-year defense agreements worth billions of dollars with every one of them. He brought something none of the other partners could offer. Not American firepower, not European diplomacy, something more specific and more immediately useful than either. He brought 4 years of hard experience, fighting the exact same weapon Iran is using in the Strait of Hormuz right now. And he is trading that experience for something Ukraine desperately needs. The deal is one of the most unexpected strategic pivots in modern military history. And it could change the outcome of the Hormuz crisis faster than anything the U.S. Navy is currently planning. Here is the connection that makes this story genuinely surprising. The drones Iran is using to blockade the Strait of Hormuz and attack Gulf energy infrastructure are Shahed variants. The Shahed 136, a delta-wing pusher-propeller attack drone that costs approximately $20,000 to produce and has a range of over 1,000 kilometers. Iran designed it. Iran licensed it to Russia approximately 4 years ago. Russia then built production facilities inside its own territory dedicated solely to manufacturing Shahed variants, which it calls the Jiran 2. In February of this year, Russia launched 5,059 of these drones against Ukraine in a single month. That was a 13% increase over January. On March the 23rd and 24th alone, Russia launched 948 drones in a single 24-hour period against Ukrainian cities. None of that would have been possible without Iran. Ukraine knows this. And Ukraine has spent 4 years developing the most battle-tested counter-drone system in the world, specifically to stop it. That is the expertise Zelensky just sold to the Gulf. But before we get to exactly what Ukraine is offering and why the Gulf states are paying billions for it, there is a detail about the Black Sea that explains why this deal is credible in a way that a simple weapons sale would not be. Stay with me. When Russia launched its full-scale invasion in February 2022, it created a naval blockade around Ukraine's Black Sea ports almost immediately. The blockade cost Ukraine approximately $20 billion in annual revenue, most of it from the grain that Ukraine exports to buyers across Asia and Africa. Ukraine had no traditional navy capable of challenging Russia's Black Sea fleet directly. What it had was engineers, desperation, and 4 years to develop something new. Ukraine built the Magura V5 and the Sea Baby. These are autonomous naval drones, unmanned surface vessels that travel on the water rather than through the air. They carry explosive warheads and can be guided to specific targets with precision. Ukraine used them to strike Russian warships at port in Crimea and in the open Black Sea. It combined them with Storm Shadow ballistic missiles to take out larger vessels. Slowly and systematically, Ukraine destroyed or forced the withdrawal of approximately 1/3 of Russia's Black Sea fleet. The fleet that was considered one of Russia's most powerful regional assets at the start of the war retreated to Novorossiysk on the Russian mainland. Today, Ukraine's trio of ports in Odessa are visited by 200 cargo ships every month. That is the Black Sea Corridor, a civilian shipping lane kept open by drone warfare and layered defense systems in the middle of an active naval conflict. That is the blueprint Zelensky is now offering to the Gulf. When he sat with Gulf leaders and they asked about the Strait of Hormuz, he did not offer sympathy. He offered the manual. He told reporters, the experience of unblocking sea trade routes with the help of, among other things, sea drones, could this experience help unblock the Strait of Hormuz? They know they can count on our expertise in this area, and we spoke in detail about sharing our experience of the Black Sea Corridor and how it functions. That is not a theoretical offer. Ukraine has already deployed 228 counter-drone specialists across 5 regional partners: Jordan, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and Kuwait. These are not advisors sitting in air-conditioned offices. These are combat veterans who have spent years intercepting the exact same drone model Iran is currently deploying against Gulf infrastructure. They arrived before the ink was dry on the formal agreements. Now here is why the financial structure of this deal is genuinely brilliant and why it serves Ukraine's interests in the Russia war as much as it serves Gulf interests in the Iran war. Stay with me because this is the strategic layer nobody is covering clearly. Ukraine has a specific problem with its air defense. Patriot advanced capability, 3 missiles, the interceptors that are most effective against Russia's ballistic missile attacks on Ukrainian cities, are produced at a rate of approximately 60 per month globally. In the first 3 days of Operation Epic Fury, the United States and its Gulf partners burned through more than 800 Patriot interceptors defending against Iranian strikes. That is more than Ukraine received all winter. The dual consumption rate of fighting 2 simultaneous conflicts with the same scarce interceptor supply is why Zelensky has been extraordinarily explicit about what Ukraine wants in return. He told reporters directly, if they give them to us, we will give them interceptors. A PAC-3 missile for a Ukrainian drone interceptor swap. The Gulf states have Patriot systems. Ukraine has cheap, mass-producible drone interceptors that its industry can produce at approximately 2,000 per day. Neither side has enough of what the other needs. The 10-year agreements formalize the exchange. What Ukraine is providing specifically is this: naval drones of the Sea Baby and Magura class for maritime operations in the Gulf. Interceptor drones that cost approximately $1,150 each, which in February intercepted more than 70% of Russian Shahed-type drones launched at Kyiv. An integrated layered defense model covering maritime drones, electronic warfare systems, and software. 228 drone warfare specialists already deployed in the region, and the operational blueprint for creating a protected civilian shipping corridor in a contested waterway. In return, Ukraine is receiving energy supplies, PAC-3 missiles, funding for joint defense production facilities, and 10-year strategic partnerships with the wealthiest energy exporting nations on the planet. The revenge dimension of this is something Zelensky has not been subtle about. Ukraine's foreign minister, Andriy Sybiha, posted on X on March the 21st that Russia did the same in the Black Sea, blocked maritime trade trying to strangle Ukraine's economy and achieve political and military goals. He called the Strait of Hormuz situation painfully familiar. Iran armed Russia with drones that had been killing Ukrainian civilians for 4 years. Ukraine is now taking that exact drone technology, improving it, and deploying it against Iran's own blockade strategy in the Gulf. Russia is simultaneously trying to strengthen its ties with Iran while watching Ukraine take over Russia's traditional influence relationships in the Middle East. Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Qatar all had long-standing economic relationships with Moscow. Those relationships are now being replaced by 10-year defense and economic partnerships with Kyiv. Oleksandr Kryev of the Ukrainian PRISM Foreign Policy Council described the strategic shift precisely. He said, "Our experience is something we can trade for additional security and a stronger negotiating position. We are showing the world that we are a more interesting and valuable partner than Russia." Countries in the Middle East have had long-standing relations with Russia, contracts with it, and essentially saw no one else in the post-Soviet space besides Moscow. That is changing now. Russia is watching its regional influence erode in real time while it simultaneously tries to help Iran through intelligence sharing and upgraded drone shipments. The country that started this chain of events by arming Iran with Shahed technology 4 years ago is now losing its Gulf influence to the country that spent 4 years learning to shoot those drones down. The EU Special Envoy to the Gulf region, Luigi Di Maio, said the European Union is calling for the Black Sea grain model to be used as the diplomatic framework to unblock the Strait of Hormuz. That model was created by Ukraine's experience and is now being packaged and exported to the Gulf as a proven operational system. The U.S. spent 30 days trying to reopen Hormuz with carrier groups, A-10 Warthogs, GBU-72 bunker busters, and 48-hour ultimatums. Ukraine arrived with 228 specialists, a decade of drone warfare expertise, and a 10-year contract. "Simple sales do not interest us," Zelensky said. "What interests him is exactly what he is getting: strategic partnerships that will fund Ukraine's defense industry, supply its missile shortfall, and establish Kyiv as the indispensable middle power in a region that was firmly in Moscow's orbit 18 months ago." Here is what the expectations were at the start of this war and what the reality of 30 days has produced. The expectation was that the Hormuz crisis would be resolved by American naval power, GBU-72 bunker busters, and A-10 Warthogs hunting Iranian fast boats. The reality is that the strait remains effectively closed. Ukraine has arrived with a battle-tested blueprint that neither Washington nor any Gulf Navy possessed, and Kyiv is now the most credible counter-drone partner in the region based on 4 years of live combat experience. The expectation was that the Iran war would drain resources and attention from Ukraine, weakening Kyiv's position in its own conflict. The reality is that Ukraine has used the Iran war to sign 10-year strategic partnerships with three of the wealthiest nations on Earth, swap its cheapest drone technology for its most needed missile interceptors, and position itself as a defense exporter to a market that was dominated by Russia 12 months ago. The expectation was that Iran's drone campaign against the Gulf would succeed because no regional military had faced this threat before. The reality is that 228 Ukrainian veterans who have been shooting down Iranian drone variants every night for 4 years landed in the Gulf before the formal agreements were even signed. Nobody predicted that the country defending itself against Russian invasion would become the decisive counter-drone partner in a war it had nothing to do with starting. But that is exactly what happened. And the country that made it possible by arming Russia with Shahed technology 4 years ago is now watching its regional influence evaporate $1 billion Ukrainian defense contract at a time. Drop your take in the comments. Is Ukraine the unexpected winner of the Iran war, or is this too early to call? This is Global Conflicts Dispatch. Subscribe. Back tomorrow.